Okay, this was the example that we actually did just before the break. And now we'll do another example, which is actually that example was, a bit longer than the first one, and it required, certain new concepts to be understood or discussed. So that's why I just, delayed it so that once we'll come back fresh, we'll start this example. So now let's have a look on this. There's a project manager who has received two proposals for a machine he wants to purchase. Using the following data about the machine, what is his most economical course of action, right? So here's a word that has been written, rather two word, his most. So when I say the most, it means these are independent project or these are mutually exclusive project. What do you think?
They're mutually exclusive.
Mutually exclusive because we are going to choose only one, the best one, the most, right? And the most what? The most economical. And when we say economical, what do we mean by that? The one that is giving us the best return. The amount of return is higher. You see here, time of return is not the concern. Amount of return is the point, right? When it had it if it was the time of return, in that case obviously it would be the payback period. But in this particular case, it is referring to the amount of return. That means here we will calculate NPV, the net present value of these two machines, and then choose the best one. Is it clear? One
Yes.
point, the most, it means we have to choose only one. That means these are mutually exclusive projects. Second thing, the most economical, that means the one which that would give us the best amount on return, right? So that means the net present value. Now let's have a look on the other details of this question. The life of first machine is 3 years, and the life of second machine is 5 years, right? This is one thing. Secondly, look at the difference in the initial investments here. The initial investment required for the first project, that is machine A, is 110,000, 100,000, 110,000, sorry. And the second one is $160,000, right? So this is the initial investment required for second machine. Then the annual benefits of first machine is 85,000 and annual cash annual cost of the first machine is 22,000, right? And for that, for the second one is 92 and 35,000. Here, now another term has been, introduced to you, that is cost of capital. And the required rate of return is still there. I'll talk about these terms maybe towards end of today's lecture, right? Okay, so now let's move on to the next, how would we solve it? Let's try to understand the situation using the timeline that we had been, using since beginning of maybe since when we started the time value of money concept. So let's say this, in case of machine A, the initial investment that is required here is 110,000 dollars, and then annual, you know, uh, cost. When I say annual cost, it means the money is cash is going out of my pocket. That means this is cash outflow. So every year I have to spend 22,000 more apart from my initial investment. This could be the maintenance cost. This could be the operation, operational cost of that machine. Obviously, machines require something, some cost for their, when they run, and similarly, they require some cost or for their maintenance, right? So it could be any cost, but that operation cost or the maintenance cost is 22,000 per year. Then comes the income, and in first year and the second and the third, every year we are getting a fixed amount of income here, right? So annual benefit of first machine is 85,000. So what would we do now? Can someone tell me?
So why is the rate of return not given in this example?
No, it's given. That was required rate of return. I just, to explain this uh, this timeline, I've made that disappear. Right? I talked about that I'll be talking about the rate of return later. Right?
So
It was
income, sir,
14%.
Okay.
income minus cost, I believe so.
Income, yeah, very right, sir. This will give us the net cash flow. We have one cash outflow and one cash inflow every year. So we'll be looking towards the net cash flow, right? If you remember the first definition of the net present value that I showed to you was sorry, this one. Here we were referring to the net cash flows, right? And what is the net cash flow? I asked it that at that time, and one of you told me that it is the difference between your incomes and the expenses, right? So now we want to see the net cash flows here. Sorry, let me come back. Uh, this one, right? And so net cash flow that would be there every year is positive 63,000. Since my income is greater than my expense, so obviously 63 is my saving. Every year I'm saving 63,000. Is it clear to everyone? I mean, this is not a big science. If I tell
Yes.
you that you have
Yes, sir.
earned 85,000 and out of this 85,000 you have expensed or you have spent 22,000, so obviously this is your saving. This is the remaining 63,000 that you have saved. So every year, as a matter of fact, I can ignore these values now, right? I can ignore these values. So my calculations would based on these four values, like my initial investment, that is $110,000, and $60,000 every year that I'm going to get. So what I will do now, to calculate its present value, I will simply calculate the present value of this, present value of this, and present value of this, like we did earlier. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, here one may think, and actually one may, attempt this question or this situation in another way. Like she might consider calculating the present value of this cash outflow, present value of this cash outflow, and then present value of this cash outflow. So when we will have present value of all the cash outflows, you can add those present values with the initial investment. That would be your overall net cost. And then you will calculate the present value of this cash inflow, present value of this cash inflow, and present value of this cash inflow. That would be the present value of your all incomes. Is it clear? This could be
Yes,
another approach.
sir.
Yeah,
Sir,
this could
could you
be.
repeat this? Could you please
Okay,
repeat this one more
right,
time?
right. Wait. Okay, the approach that I'm telling now, obviously, this is a lengthy and I guess unnecessary way, method of doing things. Like, for example, actually, what is net present value? It is the difference between present value of cash inflows and the present value of cash outflow, right? This is the actual theme. Like present value of whatever I have invested minus, sorry, the present value of whatever I am receiving minus the present value of whatever I have spent. Is it clear? This is the main theme of NPV, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. So, somebody may be tempted to say or assume or calculate things this way that I'm going to explain now. Like this $110,000 is my expense, which is already in present time, right? That person may consider that this is another expense, but this expense has to be incurred one year from now. So he or she may calculate the present value of this expense, then the present value of this expense, and lastly, the present value of this expense. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Combined together, this will give us the total of all the present values of all the cost or expenses that we are assuming to anchor on this project. Correct?
Yes, sir. Correct. Correct.
Right? So at the end, he or she may actually calculate the present value of this income now, the second income, and the third income, right? And then sum up everything. So this would be the net present value of all cash inflows. And whatever we calculated earlier was the net present value of all cash outflows. So when I subtract the net present value of all, this cash inflows minus the net present value of all cash outflows, that would give me NPV. You will get the same answer, obviously, right? You will get the same answer. However, uh, why to do six calculations here? Like one calculation for its present value, one calculation for this present value, one calculation for this present value. Similarly, one calculation for this 85,000, one calculation for this 85,000, another calculation for this 85,000. So there are six calculations of present values here. So rather than doing that, we adopt a simple way, that is to calculate the present values of all the net cash flows. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. That's
Yes,
clear.
sir.
Thank you.
Right, right. So this is what we'll do now. So annual saving for machine A is 63,000. Similarly, the annual saving for machine B would be 57,000 here. Correct? How? 92,000 is my annual benefits for second machine, 92,000 minus 35,000 is the annual expense in case of machine B. So there we will be saving 57,000 per year. Is it clear to everyone? Like in case of the
Yes.
second machine, in case of second machine, we'll have 35,000 here and obviously 92,000 here. Correct? I wish I had a board here now. So this is 92,000, right? So the difference is 57,000. Correct? So
Right, sir.
every year we'll be saving 57,000. So now I'm just shifting all this calculation or this table onto the next slide, and then we'll solve. Right. I hope this is there. Like this is the same data that we had on our last slide, and that is the life of the machine, the initial cash flow, and then annual savings. Now we are concerned about annual savings and the initial cash outflows, right? Here on the right side, we can see the cost of capital or required rate of return, that is 14%. Correct? Okay, now let's start calculating. Here, I'm telling you, how would you calculate? Can someone tell me? You just attempted an example on the last slide, like before the break, sorry. We had a table. In that
3,000.
table, yeah, in that table, we had like number of years here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right?
Yes,
And
sir.
for every year, there was uh
Cash flows.
yeah,
Cash
cash
flow.
flows, very right. And in this case, the cash flow is consistent. That is 63,000 every year, right? Isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, but this has to be there for 3 years only. The life of this machine is 3 year. So year
Yes.
4 and 5 will be blank for this. And then present value interest factor, correct? From the
Yes,
Yes,
table,
sir.
sir.
and we'll put it here. And then the present value of all cash inflows. For that, we'll multiply like all of these amount with the respective what present value interest factor. Is it clear to everyone?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. Then we'll get three present values. We'll just add those present values and we'll try to calculate the difference between initial cash flows outflow and the sum of all the present values. So this is one thing. Then we'll check. This will give us an NPV for machine B. Sorry, machine A. Then we'll check the NPV of machine A. Sorry, machine B. Then right the same way. However, if you see here again, the number of years are different. Obviously, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will go up to 5, and amount is also different, 57,000. However, what about present value in trust factor?
Same.
Present value, it would be same. It would be same because for both of these cases, the interest rate is 14%. So in the table, we'll be checking the column of 14%. Then for year one, under 14%, whatever amount came to be here, it would also be there, present here. Similarly, for second year, for 14% discount rate, again, the amount would be the same. For third year, again, the amount would be same. However, for fourth and fifth year, there was no fourth and fifth year here in case of machine B, but for machine A, but for machine B, we will have some value of present value in trust factor for year 4 and 5 as well. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Everybody is with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Right, right. Very right. So, look, now you have two options. One, to calculate, the NPV of one machine and then calculate the NPV of second machine, right? And then compare these two NPVs. This is another way of doing it. Like I've done it just to give you a comparison. Like, on slides, if I put too lot of text, obviously that would confuse you or it would not be readable, right? So that's why I have made or prepared a joint table. You can use a joint table or you can calculate like NPV of machine A and then NPV of machine B, as I just showed you. But this is another way of doing the things. I know that present value interest factor would remain same for machine A and for machine B. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Any
Yes,
doubts?
sir.
Right. So
No.
what I did, okay. So present value interest factor would remain same, but cash flows of machine A and obviously cash flow of machine B are different. And then obviously we have to calculate the present value of cash flows for both the machine. So let's see how did we do it. Now the cash flows for machine A are 63,000, but this is only for 3 years. Obviously there's no cash inflow for machine A because its life is 3 years. For machine B, the life is 5 years. And every year the net cash flow is 57,000. Correct? Any doubts?
No, sir.
No.
No, sir.
Okay. Right. So now from table, we can calculate the present value interest factor. And obviously, we are going to look into the column that tells us about the present value interest factor values at a rate of 14%. For year one, this value is what?
And it double 72.
0.8772, right? So I'll just write it here. For next year, the value is
0.76.
0.7695. This is for second year. For third year, it's 0.6750. Then for third, it's 0.5921, and then 0.5194. Is it clear to everyone?
Sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now for present value for machine A, how would we calculate? I'll multiply this future value 1 multiplied by this interest factor,
Interest factor. Yes, sir.
right? It would give me the present value of first machine A for first year. Then present value for the amount of this, the 63,000. Again, I'll multiply it with the present value interest factor for the second year, and this would give me the second present value. Then I'll calculate the present value of third net cash flow. And for this, I'll multiply it by the present value interest factor of the third year. So this would give me present values of all three net cash flows. Now I'll go to the machine B, obviously, because there's no year 4 and 5 for machine A. So here, again, I will multiply what? I'll multiply these net cash flows by the respective interest factor,
Perfect.
because the interest factor would remain same for both the
Yeah.
machine. So this would be, or these would be my present values for 5 years. Like when I multiply 57,000 by the present value interest factor of fourth year, this is the value that I will get. Now can you observe one thing here? The interest rate, discount rate was a bit higher this time. Like in most of the examples that we had been doing, the interest rate was 10% or 8%. But here, the interest or discount rate was a bit higher. And since the discount rate was a bit higher, the amount has reduced a lot. Like 50,000, 57,000, that is expected after 4 years, its worth in present value term is just 33,000, right? Even in 1 year, the 57,000 would be reduced to 50,000 only, correct? Because the interest discount rate was a bit higher this time. Right. So with this, now things are pretty simpler. I guess you can very easily calculate the net present value of machine A and net present value of machine B. How would you calculate net present value of machine A? You will
So,
add all these present values
yes,
Yes, sir.
minus 100,
110K.
right? And for other machine, I will add all these present values, because the formula is present value of all cash inflows minus the initial cash outflow. Correct? So this way, on the top left corner, can you see? I've calculated the present value of all the present values of cash inflows of machine A minus the initial investment, and my NPV came to be 36,267.1. What about the second machine? Here, the NPV came to be 35,692.4. So now, can you tell me which project I would select?
Machine A, sir.
Machine A.
Mach-
Machine
Machine
A.
A,
Yes.
yeah, because it has got higher NPV. So higher the NPV, the better it is, correct? Obviously, that is indicating that we'll earn more on this. Our return would be higher. Our saving would be higher, correct?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now here, before I actually come back to this, I just want to reiterate or revise a concept that we studied in the last lesson, and that was about the mutually exclusive projects and the independent projects. Let's say there are four proposals on my table: A, B, C, and D. And I'm just giving you two different examples, right? In one example, we will see how this concept is applicable, the concept of mutually exclusiveness and the independent projects, how it is applicable to in case of payback period calculation, and how this would affect in case of net present value, right? These two examples has nothing to do with each other. Please remember that. So let's say we have different payback periods for all these proposals, right? For project A, the payback period is 2.9 years. For proposal B, the payback period is 2.1 year. For proposal C, the payback period is, let's say, 3 year. And for proposal D, the payback period is 2.4 years. Is it clear to everyone, this example?
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Let's say our organization has established a criteria, a basic criteria, and that is that our cutoff limit, like considering so many factors, they have decided this. Obviously, it is a subjective thing. You must remember that the cutoff limit for this is what the organization has decided, that we will not select a project which has got a payback period greater than 2.5. This is our cutoff limit. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Now, in this case, which project would you select?
Obviously,
If this is
2.1 and 2.4.
right. Now,
Project.
very right. Now, but first I need to establish one thing. Are these mutually exclusive projects or they are independent projects?
Independent,
If
sir.
let's say if they are independent, in that case, we will select all the projects that meet this basic criteria. That means, as one of you mentioned, that we will select 2.1, the project B, and 2.4, because these are two projects that meet this basic criteria of 2.5 years. However, if these are mutually exclusive projects, then we will select only the project B. Is right? Okay. Is it clear to everyone?
Yes.
No, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me explain it again. Like if these projects are mutually exclusive project, it means we have to choose only one project. So we will choose the best one, right? Whosoever said no, sir, are you
Okay,
getting it?
fine.
Right, sir?
Yes, yes, yes,
Oh,
fine.
right. But if these are independent projects, then we will select all those projects that meet the basic criteria of selection. Here, project A doesn't meet the basic criteria of selection. That is a payback period of 2.5 years or less. So this is just dropped. Similarly, for project C, the criteria, the payback period is 3 years, and it is again not meeting the basic criteria. But the for project B and project D, both of them actually meet the basic criteria of 2.5 years. So if my projects are independent projects, then I will select all those projects that meet the basic criteria. Is it clear?
Yes.
Like
Yes, sir.
what if uh, let me put it. What if this basic criterion was 2 years? Then what?
So then would still
No
फिर कोई
project will be
select
selected.
project, no project would be selected, sir.
Yeah, we'll reject all of them. We'll reject all of them, whether independent or whether mutually exclusive. Correct? So that means
Correct.
we look at two things at a time. One, if something doesn't meet the basic criteria, we'll drop all of them. Right? If nothing meets the basic criteria. But if some of these projects meet the basic criteria while others don't meet the basic criteria, then we move on to the next step. And that next step is whether these are independent projects or these are mutually exclusive. If these are mutually exclusive, we will choose one best, right? But the basic criteria should be met by that. Like in this particular example, if my cutoff limit is 2, the best project is still B. However, this B, even the best project doesn't meet the criteria of the cutoff limit. Is it clear?
Sir, wait,
Yes,
Uh,
sir.
exclusive.
in case
सर
of जी sir?
सर ये कट ऑफ लिमिट जो है वो ग्रेटर देन इक्वल टू 2.5 है। पहले जो हमने म्यूचुअली एक्सक्लूसिव की बात की थी तो उसमें
Mhm.
हमने दोबारा रिपीट कर दें कि 2.1 वाला सेलेक्ट किया था, 2.4 वाला। 2.1 वाला क्यों सेलेक्ट किया था और 2.4 वाला
Okay.
इंडिपेंडेंट क्यों सेलेक्ट किया था? ये कंफ्यूज हो रहा है, कंफ्यूजिंग है थोड़ा सा।
Okay. Let me repeat it. Look, let's say there are 4 projects. The payback period of all these are written here, 2.9 years for project A. For B, it was 2.1. For C, let's say it is 3 years. And for D, it is 2.4 years. Correct? And the cutoff
ओके,
limit, like in the first example, I said that let's say the cutoff limit is 2.5 years. Is it clear? This is the
यस
basic
सर।
criteria that is established by the organization that we will not accept any project, if the payback period of that project is greater than 2.5. That means we will accept all those projects whose payback period is equals to 2.5 and less than 2.5, correct?
Yes,
Is
sir.
it clear?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So now, if this is the criteria, then which project would you select? Now, it would depend on a factor, and that factor is whether these are mutually exclusive project or these are independent projects.
Sir, we
If,
will be selecting B and D.
sir, एक मिनट, नहीं, that would depend. वही मैं कह रहा हूँ, please focus on that. That would depend whether these are independent projects or these are mutually exclusive projects. If these are mutually exclusive, then what?
So
Then B,
then
sir.
B, sir.
B.
Yeah, we
B.
will choose one that is the best one.
So
But
that's D.
that is B, bravo, right? But still, first thing that I need to check that which projects actually meet this basic criteria. So A is automatically dropped, but because it is not meeting the basic criteria of 2.5. C is automatically dropped because it is not meeting the basic criteria. So B and D are two projects that meet the basic criteria. And since these are mutually exclusive projects, therefore, we will choose out of these two, we will choose the best one, and that is B, right? Because these are mutually exclusive, no matter both of these, yes, I understand that both of these meet the basic criteria of 2.5 years, but we have to choose one, the best one. But if these are independent projects, then what? We will select all
So we
these projects,
select B
all
and D.
those, yeah, all those projects that meet the basic criteria. So since B and D meet the basic criteria, we will select all these projects. Let's say if A had a payback period of 2.2 years, then we would have selected A as well. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Now, this is one thing that I discussed, and then I changed the basic criteria, right? And I said that let's say if we had a basic criteria of 2 years, not 2.5, let's say this was the basic criteria, then which project would we select?
None.
None, right? Because the first condition, even the first condition would not be met. I'll drop this, I'll drop this. So whether it is mutually exclusive or independent, since none of the projects meet the basic criteria, so we will not select any of the projects. Is it clear?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Right. So now let's apply the same concept on NPV, right? Let's say there are 3 projects or 4 projects. Let's say A, B. I'm sorry, it's really hard to write with mouse, A, especially when it is stuck. A, B, C, and D. These are 4 projects. The NPV of first project is minus 1200. The NPV of second project is, let's say, 4000.
क्वेश्चन
The
है
NPV, sir,
सर, जो भी आपने
N,
बताया था म्यूचुअल और इंडिविजुअल में
sir.
रेलिवेंट एक छोटा सा क्वेश्चन है
जी सर, बोलिए।
सर। आपने कहा था कि म्यूचुअल में हमने बेस्ट देखना है कि जो लास्ट टाइम में होगा
सर,
और अगर कोई प्रोजेक्ट हमें मोर प्रॉफिट दे रहा है विद हायर टाइम, स्टिल हम वही सिलेक्ट करेंगे लेस टाइम वाला। लाइक 2.1 में हमें प्रॉफिट कम हो रहा है लेकिन 3 ईयर में हमें प्रॉफिट ज़्यादा हो रहा है, या
हाँ,
2.4
ये
में ज़्यादा
अच्छा,
हो रहा
इस चीज को देखें। हाँ, ये 2 अलग-अलग बातें हैं। मैं उसी की तरफ आ रहा हूँ आहिस्ता-आहिस्ता, राइट? एंड दैट इज द
है।
मेन डिस्कशन दैट विल डू। लाइक लुक, अभी हम 2 अलग टेक्निक्स देख रहे हैं। Sorry, I'm sorry. The question the person asked is that if a project is giving us a return in 2 years, but this return is lesser, right? Another project that is giving us a return in 3 years or 4 years maybe. So the payback period for this is larger. However, it is also giving us a higher return. So what you are doing, you are actually combining or looking at 2 techniques at a time, right? You are
Got it.
considering 2 factors at a time. The payback period would be told to you, or you will come to know about the payback period sorry, this return, the time of return from payback period, and the amount of return, you will calculate it using NPV, isn't it? If time is crucial to you, then you will consider this one. But if amount of return is crucial to you, obviously you will give more weightage to net present value. Is it clear, sir? I'll
Got
talk
it, sir.
about this in a while. So now let's come back to our original example that we were discussing. Let's say there's a project A, which has got an NPV of minus 1200. There's a project B, which has got an NPV of 4000. There's another project C, which has got an NPV of 800. And there's a project D, which has got an NPV of, let's say, minus 500. So now, which project would you choose? If I ask you this, what should be your question to me first? If I ask
So
you,
we select those projects which give him a profit.
I think first
no,
we will see the
Same question.
investment
Are they independent
return
or
value.
very right, sir. Very right. Yeah. First, no, first you need to ask me one thing. Sir, are these independent or are these mutually exclusive? Whether they are independent or mutually exclusive, one thing is clear. Project A would be dropped because it is not meeting the basic criteria of having an NPV that is positive, right? The
Right,
first
sir.
criteria for selection of or rejection of a project in case of NPV is to have a positive NPV. Since A doesn't have a positive NPV, so it's rejected. Similarly, D doesn't have a positive NPV, so it would be rejected too. So this is the basic criteria in case of NPV. Like in case of payback period, we had to establish a cutoff limit. But in case of NPV, we already know the cutoff limit. That is very clear that if NPV is positive, select it. If NPV is negative, reject it. So for project A and project D, the NPVs are negative, correct? So these two are going to be dropped. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Now we are left with only two choices, that is B and C. So now which one project, if I ask you which one project, it means I'm telling you indirectly that these are mutually exclusive and you have to choose only one. In that case, you will choose the best one, which is
B.
giving you
B.
more return. That is B. But in case if I tell you that these are independent project, then what? In that
B.
case, you will select both of these project B and C, as both of these meet the basic criteria of NPV. That is, they both have a positive NPV. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
If
yes?
right. So if all of these had a negative NPV, then what?
All are dropped.
All are dropped, right? So I hope this is clear to everyone.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. So now let's come back. Let's come back and have a discussion on this question again. Look, here, if you see, there's some points that you need to notice actually. First thing, we are sure that NPV is higher in case of machine A, so we will choose machine A. Obviously, in this question, I asked you to choose only one, the most economical. Do you remember?
Yes, sir.
So out that means we have to choose one. But essentially, both of these are giving us a positive NPV. If these had been independent projects, we could have selected both of these. Correct, Ji?
Yes,
Correct,
sir.
sir.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
This is one point that I wanted to highlight. Second point. Now, one of you actually just talk about what about number of years here? Like for machine A, its life is just 3 years, and for machine B, its life is 5 years, right? So, will you consider this time factor here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I think this method does not consider the time.
Now there are two dimensions of time. Please understand it. One dimension is, are you concerned about the time in which we will get our return? This is one aspect. Second aspect is the lifetime of the project. These two are different things. Let me first tell you something about the lifetime. It has got 3 years as lifetime, and this has got 5 years as lifetime. Correct? So will we consider it or not? Look, in
No, we will
no,
not
sir.
consider it
Why not, sir?
That depends
because
upon.
we are getting a less profit after 5 years.
Okay, and sir, what is your good name, please?
Ayaz.
Okay, sir, please write 1 mark for sir. CR, are you there? CR was here, I guess, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, is present, sir.
Okay, just write 1 mark for. Please ensure I have awarded 2 marks today. So please ensure that you have, got registered those marks with the CR. Okay, so now why I will not consider the time here. Look, in my NPV calculation, don't you think we have already considered the number of years in my calculation? N was the number of years. And because of those years, whatever reduction in the amount, could be there, we have already accounted for it. In present value calculation, we have already addressed, the time factor here in the formula, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Right? So we have already incorporated the effect of number of years in this. This is one thing. Second thing, as Sir said, on which I awarded him a mark, that was, look, machine A is saving this much amount for you in 3 years, and machine B is saving this much amount for you in 5 years. So why to wait for 5 years? Like having a longer life is always not the desire. Having a good life is the desire, right? At the end of the day, if you are, among those who are on the right side, those who would be, would get higher benefits, if you are among them, then why to wait for 5 years to get that benefit? Why not to earn more, right? With a machine that has just 3 years of life, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Now, even
Sir,
if,
sir, regardless of
even,
project type, like it's individual or mutual.
yeah, individual or mutual, look, here we are talking about that one machine has got 5 years of life and other machine has got 3 years of life. I'm saying that that number of years, the effect of those number of years has already been incorporated in the calculation of net present value, right? We have
Okay.
already, right. So this is one thing. Even if now let's say the results were different, like were inverse. Like in case of machine B, the NPV was 36, let's say, and in case of machine A, if NPV had to be 35, now what would happen?
Sir, we will
Now
move for 30, 36 or
36, 36. We will move for 36. We like when you are using NPV, the criteria would remain this, the higher the NPV, the better it is, because you use your NPV method, you use NPV method when your focus is the amount of return, not the time of return. Is it clear? When your focus is the amount of return, that how much, how, how
Sir, I
large
have a
or how
question.
less, just
What about the initial investment?
yeah, that would be my next point of discussion,
Okay, sir.
right? That is बिल्कुल ठीक है. Well, that is the third question that I wanted to touch upon, right? So that's why actually I delayed this thing. I postponed this topic or this example until after the break. So now one thing, that in case of net present value, Look, our focus is amount of return. So in this case, we will choose a project that has got higher return. And when I say higher return means higher NPV, correct?
Right, sir.
Right. If time of return is my concern, then NPV, I don't need to calculate NPV. I will just calculate the payback period there.
Got it.
Right? Okay. Actually, as a matter of fact, practically, we use all the techniques almost all the time. And then we put everything in front of us and then make certain decisions. I'll explain about these things in a while. But now, third factor that has come in, and that is what? The initial investment.
Sir, one thing.
Sir,
Can we apply both formula like we need the payback period as well along with the net profit as
yes,
well?
yes, 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 sir. We actually, you know, most of the time we calculate all these three or four things and we just put them in front of us and then we try to evaluate, right? It is same as like
Right.
do you remember assigning weightages to different project selection where we assigned weightages to different criterion? Let me give you an example of it again. There's a technique we call it as, or this is a decision making, we call it as multi-criteria decision making, right? Multi-criteria decision making. I'm just writing an abbreviation, although this is not a standard abbreviation, but multi-criteria decision making. Do you remember a project that we selected based on the improvement in quality, the profit, and the growth? So we had three criteria and we assigned different weightages to it. I hope you remember that example.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Right? So this way, when we have multiple criterion in front of us, we actually assign some weightage to it, and then we pick one of them. Similarly, let's say you will actually study a technique that is AHP, right? That you will study in your second semester. The how to calculate or sorry, how to choose a thing based on multi-criteria decisions, multi-criteria. For example, let's say if there are three candidates, I'm hiring some people, and there are three candidates, A, B, and C. And the only criterion that is in front of me is the level of education with GPA, right? The level of education with GPA. Let's say if A has a bachelor's degree, B has a master's degree, C also has a master's degree, but the GPA of C is, let's say, 3.95, okay, and
C.
the and the sir हो सकता है इसका चार हो जाए. so the GPA of, let's say, B is 3.5, right? So in this case we would select one, like this C as a candidate, right? Let's say whatever hiring I'm doing. But if I'm concerned not only by the level of education, but the experience and age as well, then what? Like, this is kind of a job for which I would prefer younger people because there are too many site visits and traveling. So I would prefer younger people here, or there's a lot of field work here. So now, which one to choose? Let's say A has a bachelor degree, but he or she has got an experience of 6 years, and his or her age is 29. Just after the bachelor's degree, he or she immediately got a job, and it's been 6 years he or she has been working here. But in case of master wala person, he has got, let's say, 3 years of work experience, and his his age is, let's say, 27. And the next one, his experience is, let's say, 5 years, but the age is 33. Now, what to do? Obviously, you will consider that
A.
sir, it would depend. Which of these are more crucial to you? Experience, level of education, or age? All of these would have some weightage in your decision making. Is it clear?
Right.
We will calculate a weighted average basically.
Yeah, weighted average kind of thing, right? So I'm not going into detail of it, but I hope you understand the scenario. When you have multiple criteria, obviously some of these criteria would be more important to you than others. So you assign more weightage to them, correct? Let's say if experience is the most crucial factor, and I say I'll make my decision 50% based on this, and then level of education is more important to me, and 30% weightage to this, and then age factor is there, and I would prefer 20% for this. So according to that, you are giving more weightage to experience now. Is it clear?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Similarly, in case of projects, you see, if there's only one single decision making factor, like the time of return, then decision is very easy. Just pick the payback period thing. And shorter the payback period, the better it is. Correct. Right? But if your decision criteria is the amount of return, how much return you would get, in that case, NPV is a good technique. Fine. But what if, are you there? Are you guys there?
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
sir.
Okay,
Yes,
okay,
sir.
okay. But what if I want to consider the time factor as well as the amount of return, and let's say, as one of you mentioned, that the amount of initial investment that is required, that is also under consideration. So for that, you will adopt a model something like this. Time is the most important factor for you? Is the amount most important factor for you, or is the initial investment is more important for you? So
But
based on
in that case, we will be seeing the weightage of every factor, right?
every factor and
Like
then
if you
make a
take.
decision, right? Yes.
Oh,
Even if you don't do it mathematically, but by considering all of them and putting all these values in front of them, then having a discussion casually, like not the exact value, still you know you can, after the discussion, you would be inclined towards certain thing. Is it clear?
right, sir.
Right. Okay, so now we have discussed certain points, and what are those points? One thing that, look, life if life is this factor here, in which we was talking about, that okay, this has got 5 years of life, the 3 years of life, this has got 5 years of life, then will we consider life here? No, we will not, because the number of years or the amount of time that would be required, or that a machine would work, has already been incorporated in the net present value formula. This is one thing. Second thing, will you select a project based on how quickly it gives us an investment? For that, we will not consider the NPV values. For that, we'll just go back and calculate the payback period. In that case, NPV will not be our consideration. Is it clear?
Right,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
Then one last factor that is still left, and that is, let me go back to the previous slide that some of you mentioned or highlighted. That is the difference in initial cash outflow. Look, here it is $110 and here it is $160. Now, do you think, we will consider it or not? Well, again, like as I said, if time is your, focus, go to payback period. If amount of return is the focus, then calculate net present value. Now I'll talk about something about this difference in the initial investment, right? So let's have a look on that first, and then we'll study its benefit and, the disadvantages of net present value. Let's say there are two independent projects, right? One has an initial investment of 10,000 and its present value of all cash inflows is 11,000. Another project has got initial investment of 5,90,000. That means 590,000. This is just 10,000 investment, and this is an investment of 590,000. And the present value of all cash flow inflows here is 591,500. So now, which project is giving you more? Like if I calculate the NPV of first project, it would be what? 1,000?
Yes, sir.
And what about NPV of second project? It is
15.
1,500.
1,500.
So if I consider the net present value only, in this case, if I consider the net present value only, obviously I will select the second project,
No, sir.
right?
Yes,
No,
sir. West sir.
wait. If I consider
Yes,
the
sir.
net present value, in that case,
Yes, sir.
we will, right? But considering the net present value in this scenario would be a blunder,
Definitely, sir.
right? Because because you know
Initial
the
investment is
difference
yes.
is in initial investment is too big actually, right? Like we have to spend 5,80,000 extra, right? For first project, I will spend 10,000 and in return, I will save 1,000. And here I'm spending 5,90,000 and in return, I'm only getting 1,500 as extra, as saving. So that would be a very stupid thing to do actually. However, if you still say, no, I will use NPV. If you will use NPV, then based on NPV, the criteria is higher the NPV, the better it is. But shall we use NPV in this case or not? Obviously,
No, sir.
that is the biggest question, right? That is, we will not choose NPV, sorry, we will not use NPV as a selection criteria in this. We will use another method that is profitability index in such scenarios. And that I will be talking about shortly, right? So I
Sir,
hope
is there any benchmarking of this thing that if the initial investment is above this value, then we should use the profitability
Okay,
index, and
yes,
if
yes,
it is below.
we will, yeah, sir, we will cover these three, four factors. Actually, there are 3 points that I will be briefing you shortly, right? So just give me 10 minutes. This is important discussion actually that will clarify so many other concepts in your mind, right? So just stay with me for other 30 minutes now that you are supposed to. We'll obviously discuss this point. So now I just wanted to touch upon this factor here and give you an initial thought of it. We'll be coming back to this topic in a while. Right. In case of independent projects, obviously I can select both of these, but in case of mutually exclusive, if I have to choose only one, then it is a big question mark that shall I use NPV in this scenario or not? Because if I use NPV, then NPV is telling me that choose the second one, but obviously this would be a disaster for me. So leaving this point thing here, now I'm moving on to another slide that talks about the strengths and weaknesses of net present value. The first, advantage or the strength of this technique is that it accounts for the time value of money. I hope you remember in case of payback period, the payback period ignored the time value of money factor, correct? Second thing, in case of payback period, it ignored all the cash flows that came after the payback period or beyond the payback period. Do you remember it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, but it is considering all the cash flows because it is there in the formula that present value of all cash inflows. So it is considering all the cash flows till the end of the project, right? Third thing, it provides an objective criteria. Like in case of payback period, what would be the cutoff limit? It was subjective. In some cases, for some people, even 7 years is a good payback period, right? And for many others in other circumstances, maybe 2 years is a bad payback period, because that was too much subjective actually. But in case of NPV, we have a clear-cut criteria, that is, if NPV is positive, select the project. If NPV is negative, reject the project. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Right. Then the weaknesses is it cannot be used to compare projects of different sizes. We just saw that. We just saw that one project was very small and the initial investment required for that project was only 10,000. But the other project was too big and the initial investment required for that project was 590, right? So
Yes, sir.
in that case, if we use NPV, it would mislead us. It will guide us wrongly. Is it clear?
Right,
So
sir.
that's why we
Right.
say it is the limitation of NPV that it cannot compare the projects of two different sizes, or you may say when the difference in initial investment is too large. The difference in the initial investment of two projects is too big. In that case, NPV can mislead you, right? So using NPV in such case is not advised. Then next is there no another
Using
problem
NPV,
here.
you should use some common sense, I think.
Yes, sir. But for that we have a technique actually. That is NPV. That is PI. We'll be covering that would be our next topic, right? So, but there's another problem with this, that there's no set guidelines to calculate the required rate of return. Now, what is that? This is the point that I really wanted to touch. Already, I've discussed it a bit with you.
Yes, actually,
Look,
it was just that it depends on each individual's
yeah, there's
what
so
is
many
required.
factors. There were so many factors, right? Look, now, if you remember the present value, when we were discussing the time value of factor, there I taught you how to calculate present value, right? And there were two formula for that. One was future value divided by 1 plus I raised to the power n, and there was another, that future value multiplied by present value in trust factor, right? This was the formula. When we were discussing this, at that time, I said that, look, now why did I write this thing? I've just lost everything actually. My mind get just washed out. Okay,
Sir, we are your students, so we might wash out our mind.
no, sir. Okay, uh,
We were discussing the required rate of return.
Ricardo, sorry. Okay, so now we said that all the calculations are done at some percentage, at some rate, and that rate in journal is called the discount rate, right? And the theme was that, you see, if let's say I have 100 rupees, or I'm being promised 100 rupees after 3 years from now, and if my discount rate is 10%, that means it would be reduced to 90 in 1 year, and then further it would be reduced to, let's say, 81 in another year, right? But if my percentage or discount rate is 20, this would be reduced to 80 directly in a single year actually. Correct? This was the theme. Now, which interest rate or discount rate you will use? That is the question. Which interest rate or discount rate you will use in your calculation? Obviously, if you will use a different interest rate, the NPV would be different for different rates. Correct? Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Right,
Yes, sir.
right. So, which interest rate you would use now? Either I can use an interest rate that is general interest rate that is there in the market for banks, or something promulgated by, let's say, State Bank or something, right? So now, if let's say interest rate by the banks is 10%, This was the example that I gave you maybe in second or third class. Let's say if the interest rate is 10% here, and I ask you, this is the interest rate that is there being offered by various banks. Now, if I ask you to please invest with me in a project proposal that is in front of you, that is there, and you tell me that, sir, what interest rate or what profit or rate of return you would offer me, and I say that okay, I'm going to offer you 9%, and you may say, sir, I'm sorry, we cannot actually invest in this project because I can get the same amount by investing in the bank, and that is far more secure, and I can withdraw my amount anytime from the bank. But in by investing in your case, I'm not sure whether I'll make any profit or not. Number one, it is risky. Number two, my money will get stuck in this project for next 3 years. So I'm not sure that I'll be able to withdraw it immediately or not. So and you are offering me a very low percentage. And I say, okay, I will give you 10%. You say, sorry, sir, again, my point remains the same. If you are giving me the same amount of interest that bank is also offering me, then why should I invest with you? So again, I would say that, okay, let's say, what if I offer you 13%? Now, that is a big difference, right? So some of you might, agree to invest in this proposal at this percent. Now, this would be the percentage that you require. That is required rate of return. Is it clear?
Yes.
All right, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you will, like, how did you establish this required rate of return? Considering so many fears, considering so many risks, right? Obviously, there are multiple factors, like what is the situation of the economy in the country, what is the international, foreign exchange rates, and what is the, general state of affairs in the economy of a country. Can I invest? Do we have enough opportunities to invest in new projects or not? So there are, and then obviously my personal riskiness, like am I risk taker or am I risk averse, risk seeker or risk averse? So based on decided that an interest rate that is 3% higher than the bank rate is good enough to recover or to address the additional risk that I'm taking. Is it clear? If you are not investing in the bank and you are investing in a project, that means you are putting something at risk. And what is the extra amount or rate that would satisfy this risk? You may say that, okay, if you give me a return of 13%, that is 3% higher than the bank's rate, I would consider your project to be worth risk taking. Is it clear?
All right, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
So now, in order to check the feasibility of that project, I will use, I will calculate everything at this required rate of return. Because in my opinion, this is the rate of return on which the money is being devalued. This is the rate of return which is incorporating all those risk factors that are there because of all these conditions in the market. Is it clear? So
Yes.
your NPV calculations or whatever methods we will study in the coming lectures, like we'll start a topic maybe today, and rather I will start that topic in the coming lecture, right? Because time is too short. So we are left with two methods now. So we will be using required rate of return there in our calculations. Is it clear?
Right, sir.
Right. So now we are left with one more thing. Let me just quickly give you an overview of profitability index. It's simple. We'll not get into its calculation yet, but I want you guys to understand its theme only, right? Calculations are pretty simpler. Like, first of all, payback period doesn't account for the time value of money, the net present value does. Similarly, it does not consider the cash flows beyond the payback period, but in case of NPV, it consider all the cash flows till the end of project life. Then in case of payback period, cutoff period is subjective. But in case of NPV, we have clear-cut objective criteria. That is, if NPV is positive, accept. If NPV is negative, then reject. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. In case of, now we are moving on to the third technique. Actually, I'll just give a quick overview of it, but we'll attempt its questions maybe later in the next class. But I want to, broadly touch upon some generic concepts that are there. Number one, it has got two names: benefit to cost ratio or the profitability index, right? The BCR or the PI. Both of these abbreviations are used. BCR for benefit to cost ratio and the profitability index. Now, this is the same thing that we generally refer to as cost benefit analysis, right? The cost benefit analysis. So this means the almost same thing, right? Anyways, now benefit to cost ratio or the profitability index, it is almost same as like we touched this. We started the NPV. The formula is almost same with only difference, and that is NPV is the difference of the present value of all cash inflows and the initial cash outflow. But the profitability index is the ratio of these two. In case of NPV, we used to say that present value of all cash inflows minus the initial cash outflow. But here we don't take a difference, but we take a ratio of it. We divide present value by initial cash outflow. I hope you can observe this difference very easily, but everything rest
Yes,
is
sir.
same, right? It is just a ratio, and NPV is a difference. Is it clear to everyone?
Yes.
Right. So now, if I, what is the selection criteria for PI? The selection criteria for PI is you accept the project if profitability index is greater than 1, and you reject the project if profitability index is less than 1. Is it clear? In case of NPV, we said that if NPV is positive, we will select the project. If NPV is negative, we will reject the project. But in case of profitability index, we say that if profitability index is greater than 1, we will select the project. If profitability index is less than 1, we will reject the project. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. Right. So now this is a table in front of you, and this would be our last slide, and I'll just stop it here. So please be attentive. Uh, there are three different scenarios. Let's say this is one, second one, and this is third one. So let's see these three scenarios one by one. Let's say if my initial investment is the ICOF, the initial investment, initial cash outflow is 10 million, 100,000 or whatever it is, or 10 rupees. And the present value of
सर
cash
स्लाइड
inflows.
नजर नहीं आ रही
किसी को भी नहीं आ रही?
स्लाइड मुझे नजर
नहीं
नहीं
नहीं,
आ
it's
रही
visible.
सर
It's
आज
visible. It's visible.
Sir, I
नजर आ रही
can
है नजर
see.
नहीं
Right.
नजर आ रही
सर आप दोबारा जरा कीजिएगा। वो
सर
आप there's a problem with
मोड
your
चेंज
internet.
करना है। नहीं
Huh?
सर, बेसिकली मोड का इशू होगा। They might
Okay.
select participant mode or
You
दोबारा
something else.
You can rejoin maybe. That fixes issues too.
रीजॉइन कर लेते हैं सर
Okay. Right.
ओके
So now we have, in first scenario, we have got an initial cash. Let's say we are assuming that the initial cash outflow or investment is 10 million, 10 rupees, 10, 100,000 or whatever. and the present value of all cash inflows is also 10. So if I calculate NPV, the formula for NPV is present value of all cash inflows minus the present value of cash outflows, correct? Or ICOF.
Sir.
So it is 10 minus 10, and in this case, NPV is 0. But if I calculate its PI, it is present value of cash inflows divided by the obviously ICOF, right? And in this case, it is 10 divided by 10. And the profitability index is 1. So that means NPV 0 or profitability index 1. They both mean the same thing. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Right? But in case of, let's say, this is second scenario, if my ICOF or initial investment is still 10, however, the return that I get on this investment is 12 this time. So here, if you would see, NPV is equal to voice present value minus the ICOF. In this case, the net present value is positive, that is 2. And if I calculate the PI, since all the factors are same, except here, in case of NPV, we take a difference, but in case of, PI, we take a ratio. Here, the profitability index would be 1.2. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Right? So that means a positive NPV or a PI greater than 1. A PI greater than 1 means the same. Is it clear? I repeat it.
Yes, sir.
Like an NPV being positive and means the same as a PI greater than 1. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
How many of you appeared in front of me during your admission interview?
Sir, I did.
You did, and I asked only one question. What was
Yeah.
that?
You asked me
I
if the
was
answer of this fraction is going to be greater than 1 or less than 1.
And yeah, so I asked it because I face this problem here, right? If my if my numerator is greater, obviously, if this value is greater, my PI would be greater than 1, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
right. So what does this 1.2 means here? Do you have any idea? This 1.2 means what? It is
So
telling
this
you,
means that on spending $1, I will get a return of $1.2.
very good, sir. Very good. So it means that if I spend $1 or I invest $1, in return, I will get $1.02, right? $1.20 rather. $1.20. Or in case of rupees, let's say it says that if I spend 100 rupees, in return, I will get how much?
20.
120
And
rupees.
20. Yeah.
20 rupees, correct? So this is what PI is indicating. PI tells you your return on per invested dollar. This is the point that I wanted you people to understand. PI tells you your return on per invested dollar. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay,
Yes,
now
sir.
this is the third scenario. I'll come back to this point in a while. This is your third scenario. Again, the initial investment is 10, but this time, let's say the return is 8. So in this case, net present value would be negative. And if I calculate its PI, it is 8 divided by 10, and answer would be less than 1 this time, right? And this PI that is less than 1 means the same as an NPV of having a negative, a project having a negative NPV. Is it clear? A PI of less than 1 means the same as an NPV being negative. Is it clear? So that's why
Yes.
we will reject a project that has got a PI less than 1, and we'll accept a project that has a PI greater than 1. Is this point clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now what does this PI of 0.8 tells you? What does it tell you?
It tells that
Loss
there
of
will be a
20
loss
cents.
of 20 cents on
That,
Net
a
present
yeah,
dollar
value is
investment.
lesser than.
yeah, very right. That means if we spend or we invest $100 or 100 rupees somewhere in a project, in return, we are getting $80. That means, or 80 rupees, that means we are losing 20 rupees, in fact, right? And that's why we are not going to select this project. Is it clear to everyone now?
So here again, the question comes regarding the initial investment. What
Yes,
if
sir.
the PI
Whoa,
is
whoa, whoa, sir.
again
Again, sir, I will tell you. I will tell you about that in the coming weeks. We are still left. We're only left with 4 minutes now. There are three conditions that I will teach you, right? When to choose or when to see, select NPV, and when to select PI, right? Now that would depend upon the difference in initial investment and all those factors that we will cover in the coming slide. Sorry, in the coming lecture, right? And that would be in class, inshallah, this time. Let's hope. And that is important for you to understand, actually. Okay, I wish to cover it today, but I just saw the time. It's too short now to start that topic. So here I had to cover one more point that I'm missing. Yeah, and then we'll conclude. Look, if I
हाँ
ask
सही
you,
अटेंडेंस इज आल्सो है
सर बस ठीक है सर, वो हो गई अटेंडेंस सबकी हो गई. Okay, what if, which technique you would choose if time of return is your focus?
Payback
Which
period.
technique? Payback period. Which technique you would choose if amount of return is your concern?
NPV?
NPV.
NPV. Which technique you would use if per dollar return is your concern?
PI.
Property
PI.
period.
PI.
PI, right? Please remember these three factors, three things. Then I will cover three other points that I was just telling one of you guys that I will cover in the next class. But for now, please remember three basic things. When my focus is how quick I will be able to recover my investment, that means time of return. In that case, I use payback period. If my focus is how much return, the amount of return, the profit that I will get, in that case, NPV is my technique. And if I want to know that uh, per dollar return, what would be the per dollar return? Per dollar that I will invest, how much amount it would return me? In that case, PI is the correct method. However, when to use PI or when to prefer PI and when to prefer NPV. That I will tell you in the coming class, right? About payback period, I've already told you what. Number one, when the investment period is too short. Number two, when the person to whom you are giving that
Business owner.
idea, yeah, business owner,
Time
he
value of money.
doesn't know about that, right? And then lastly, if the economy is too stable. So in that case, obviously, you may use payback period, actually, right? But as I told you in the beginning, that most of the time we calculate all of these things and we just put all these three values in front of us on a table, and then we discuss certain aspects about this. Okay, shall we prefer, like, this is a proposal for which payback period is higher, but it is giving us more return, and per dollar return is also good. There's another project whose payback period is very quick. However, the amount that we are getting is very less, and per dollar investment is still good. So based on this, either you can draw that multi-criteria, the weighted average thing, or you can just by discussion, having a look, get a broader idea of it and pick one of the projects. Is it clear to everyone? That's it.
Yes, sir.
Thank
Yes,
you.
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Thank,
Yes, sir.
Clear,
thank you
sir.
so much. Hopefully, we'll meet in campus in the coming lecture. So see you until then. Allah Hafiz.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.